Hello, let's talk about carbs. As most of you know, carbs have been erroneously demonized in the past couple of decades. So I'm going to explain to you very logically why we should not be afraid to eat carbs, and not just why we should not be afraid to eat them, but why they're so important to your health, to your hormones, to your happiness, to your athletic performance, and if you're on a diet, why they're important to your diet. So I like to use science and I like to use logic. That way we don't need to butt heads about our opinions or our feelings. So from a very logical standpoint, it's important to understand that carbohydrates, every gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories. Do you know what else has 4 calories? Every gram of protein. Do you know what has 9 calories? Every gram of fat. So this is why it becomes somewhat ludicrous when people say, just eat protein and fat, not carbs, because carbs are making you fat. From a logical and scientific standpoint, that literally makes no sense, right? Fat is higher in calorie per gram than carbohydrates, and protein and carbs are the same number of calories per gram. So let's debunk that myth that carbohydrates make you fat. What makes somebody fat or gain weight is when they eat more calories overall than they burn. So a lot of times people think that it's the carbohydrate itself, the bread, the ice cream, the cake, that's making them fat. When in fact, it's just that the types of carbohydrates they're choosing tend to be higher in calories because they're mixed with fat. And they tend to eat more of them because they're very satiating. They're addicting, if you will. I'm not saying sugar is addicting, but we all know it's a lot easier to stop eating a bag of carrots than it is to stop eating a cake, right? So people have confused over the years thinking, well, I'm getting fat because I'm eating carbs. No. You're not getting fat. You're not gaining weight because you're eating carbs. It's because the carbs you're choosing are making it difficult for you to stay within a calorie range where you can sit at maintenance weight. So you're not gaining weight, you're not losing weight. So it's not, in fact, the carb that's making you gain weight. Again, carbs and protein both have 4 calories per gram. So it literally makes no sense to say, well, I'm going to cut out carbs because they're making me fat and just eat protein and fats that actually have more calories per gram, right? So logic and science win this argument. Sure, behaviorally, we can say, well, it's harder for me to stop eating when I eat a lot of carbs because they're very like, I don't want to say addicting again. They're not addicting, but it's like you want to eat more of them because they're delicious and they're satisfying and they're comforting. So a lot of people say, well, it's just easier for me to cut carbs because it's easier for me to rein in my appetite if I'm just eating protein and fat. But we all know the big problem with that. Well, a couple. One, it's not sustainable. It's just not. Unless for the rest of your life, you are going to decide, I'm just never going to eat a carbohydrate because I just cannot stop myself from inhaling all of them for the rest of your life. And who wants to do that? And you shouldn't have to. Instead, you need to get to the root of why you're gorging yourself on these carbohydrates. And usually it's because you've restricted yourself from them. So again, by saying, well, I'm going to solve this problem by further restricting myself, you're actually making it worse. So behaviorally, it doesn't make sense to cut out carbs because eventually you're going to start eating them. And you're not solving the problem. You're slapping a Band-Aid on it. And you're depriving yourself of wonderful food and wonderful experiences, right? Now, from a performance standpoint, from a fueling your body standpoint, from a feeling good standpoint, from a hormonal standpoint, carbohydrates are so essential. And I know there's going to be an outlier here or there that's like, I cut out carbs and I feel great and I fuel my body through fat. Cool, good for you. But the science, the research, not just your anecdote. Say over and over and over again, the best source of fuel, the most efficient source of fuel, the easiest way for our bodies to give us fuel, the most readily available fuel is carbohydrates. So why are we depriving our body of that? And even if you're not an athlete, even if you don't exercise, you still need fuel. You need to live. You need to survive. You need to get through your day. You need to do whatever it is that you do for your work, for your family, for your friends, to just live. And if you're taking away carbohydrates from yourself, you're taking away the ability to not just survive, but literally to thrive. So yes, you can do it. You can cut out carbohydrates. But again, why? You're not going to be able to sustain it. It's not lower calories than protein or fat. You are going to eventually blow it and find yourself knee deep in boxes of donuts and ice cream or whatever. So instead, what do? How can we provide ourselves with this wonderful source of fuel, carbohydrates, without gaining weight from a behavioral standpoint? One, don't deprive yourself. It all goes back, like you can go all the way back to biblical times, and I am not a religious person, but I know this story. The oldest story in the book, right? The Garden of Eden. Don't eat that apple. Don't take that apple from the tree. And what happens when you tell someone don't do that? That's all that they want to do. So the more you tell yourself, don't eat this, don't eat that, that's the more you're going to want to do it. And the more you're not going to be able to stay away from it. So give yourself permission. Not just because eventually you're going to give into temptation, but because carbohydrates are a wonderful source of fuel to live, to thrive, to do the things that you want to do, to feel good, to allow your hormones to thrive, to sleep better. All the things that make your world go round are going to be so much better if you give yourself the gift of carbohydrates. Something a lot of people seem to struggle with is, again, when I eat carbohydrates, all I want to do is eat more. And that's, again, most of the time you're saying that, it's because you're not just eating carbs, you're eating mixed, what we call mixed macro carbohydrates. So carbs that usually have a lot of fat in them. The cakes, the cookies, the donuts, the ice creams. And those things aren't bad and you should allow yourself to eat them. But don't blame it on the carb. It's not because it's a carb that you are quote unquote addicted. If you fill up your plate and fill up your day with things like whole grains, potatoes, rice, oats, oatmeal, fruits, vegetables, those are all carbs that I bet you can eat and also stop yourself from going overboard. It's because in your head, you're equating carbohydrates with like highly processed, highly fatty carbs. And yeah, those become hard to put away. They're highly satiating. They're highly, we're not satiating, they're highly, I'm forgetting the word, and I'm on the spot. They make you just want to keep eating more and more and more. They're delicious. But if you actually go back and say, okay, I'm going to allow myself to eat those sometimes, but 80% of the time my carbohydrates are going to come from less processed foods, from more whole food sources. Again, rice, potatoes, whole grains, oats, oatmeal, cereals, popcorn, like, rice cake kind of stuff. You're not going to have a really hard time stopping yourself. So I want to, again, wrap this up and tell you, carbohydrates are not making you fat. They do not make you gain weight. By depriving yourself of carbohydrates, you are behaviorally setting off this vicious cycle where you're deprive, binge, deprive, binge. And physically, you are depriving yourself of the numero uno fuel source for your body, whether or not you're an athlete, endurance athlete, or just someone that likes to live their life. However, if you are not allowing yourself to eat carbohydrates because you've fallen prey to this carbs are making me fat, you are doing yourself a huge disservice. And if nothing else here makes sense to you, remember, carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram, protein, 4 calories per gram, fat, 9. So how could anybody say that carbohydrates are what are making you fat when they have the same calories as protein? Look at the types of carbs that you're eating. Are they mixed macro? Are they carbs mixed with fat? Or are they single macro? Potatoes, rice, oatmeal, things like that. And if you could focus 80% of the time on the more single macro type of carbohydrates, I would place a big wager against you. My bet would be that if you try and focus 80% of your carbs on more whole food carb, nutrient dense carbs, and only 20% on the other ones, I bet you don't have to cut carbs to lose weight. If you found this helpful, if you have questions, give me a thumbs up, comment below. You can find me on Instagram, Shelly, SHELLEY _ANICIETE_fitness. I'm also on Facebook, Shelly Anachete. I'm also on TikTok. Good luck finding me there.